The old folks always whispered about Blackwood Forest. Never go after dark, never go alone. Their warnings echoed with generations of fear. They spoke of things unseen, of laughter on the wind that chilled you to the bone. They spoke of clowns. I never believed them. Old wives' tales to keep kids in line. How wrong I was. Blackwood wasn't just a forest, it was a presence, a hungry darkness waiting to swallow you whole. And the clowns, they were real. We were young, invincible, or so we thought. 4 of us, out to prove the stories wrong. The air grew heavy as we crossed the threshold into Blackwood. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy. Shadows danced, twisting familiar shapes into grotesque mockeries. The air grew colder, damp against our skin. The forest felt alive, watching, waiting.
Then we heard it, a faint giggle carried on the breeze.
Our blood ran cold, the stories were true.
We pressed on, hearts pounding. The laughter grew closer, intertwined with the rustle of leaves. Then, we saw them. 2 figures, bathed in the pale glow of the moon. Clowns. Their faces were painted in grotesque parodies of joy. Their eyes, though, held a chilling emptiness.
One held a balloon, its color an unnatural, sickly green.
The other clutched a rusted, oversized mallet. They didn't speak, just stared. Their silence was more terrifying than any scream.
We were frozen, trapped in the gaze of something wicked. We ran. Blinded by terror, we crashed through the undergrowth. The sound of our own ragged breaths filled our ears.
Behind us, the sound we had dreaded. Laughter, cold, merciless, echoing through the trees. It was a chase.
The forest seemed to twist around us, turning familiar paths into dead ends. The air grew thick with the stench of decay and something else, something sickly sweet.
The laughter was relentless, spurring us onward, deeper into the heart of the nightmare.
We were lost, hopelessly turned around in the labyrinthine woods.
The laughter was all around us now, closing in.
Each shadow seemed to writhe, taking on the form of a grotesque clown.
The forest itself was alive with their presence.
Panic choked us, threatened to overwhelm us.
We had to escape, had to find a way out of this living nightmare.
But Blackwood Forest held us fast, its grip tightening with every passing moment.
We stumbled into a clearing, a desperate gasp escaping our lips.
But relief curdled into fresh terror.
Before us stood a macabre carnival.
Tattered tents, a carousel frozen mid-spin, its painted horses grinning grotesquely.
And everywhere clowns.
Their painted smiles were cruel mockeries of joy.
They moved with an unsettling grace, their eyes never leaving us.
We had stumbled into their domain, their twisted playground.
The air vibrated with an unseen energy, a sense of wrongness that sank deep into our bones.
They were closing in, their laughter a chorus of madness.
We were surrounded.
Their eyes glinted with a terrifying amusement.
They were enjoying this, our fear their twisted entertainment.
We had to fight back.
But what weapon could we use against such creatures?
These weren't men in costumes, but something ancient, something evil.
Our courage, already worn thin, threatened to shatter completely.
We were lambs to the slaughter.
We were dragged deeper into the heart of the carnival, the laughter echoing in our ears, a symphony of our doom. The lights flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows that danced around us, making it hard to distinguish reality from nightmare. The air was thick with the scent of cotton candy and something far more sinister, a mix that turned our stomachs.
They were too strong, their grip inescapable. The clowns, with their painted faces and grotesque smiles, seemed to derive pleasure from our fear. Their hands, cold and clammy, felt like iron shackles around our wrists, pulling us further into the abyss.
We thrashed, screamed, fought with the last vestiges of our strength. Our voices, hoarse from shouting, were swallowed by the cacophony of the carnival. Every attempt to break free was met with more resistance, as if the very air around us was conspiring to keep us trapped.
But it was no use. The carnival seemed to stretch on forever, an endless maze of twisted metal and faded paint. The rides, once symbols of joy and excitement, now stood as silent sentinels of our despair. The laughter, once cheerful, now echoed with a malevolent glee, fading into the darkness.
The clowns were upon us, their cold, clammy hands reaching out. Their eyes, hidden behind layers of makeup, seemed to pierce through our very souls. Each touch felt like a violation, a reminder of our helplessness in the face of their overwhelming power.
Their touch sent shivers down our spines, a feeling of wrongness so profound it was almost unbearable. It was as if their very presence was a corruption, a blight that tainted everything it came into contact with. The sensation lingered, a cold, creeping dread that refused to dissipate.
The carnival spun around us, the laughter growing louder, more insistent. The lights blurred into a dizzying array of colors, making it impossible to focus. The world tilted and swayed, a chaotic dance that left us disoriented and vulnerable.
The ground seemed to sway beneath our feet. It was as if the very earth was rebelling against us, shifting and shaking to throw us off balance. Each step was a struggle, a fight to remain upright in a world that had turned against us. The nightmare was relentless, a never-ending torment that left us questioning our sanity. They forced me to my knees, the cold, hard ground digging into my bones. The forest was silent, save for the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying foliage, a fitting backdrop for the horror that was about to unfold. One of the clowns, the one with the sickly green balloon, leaned close. His painted face was a grotesque parody of joy, the colors garish and unsettling in the dim light. The balloon bobbed slightly, as if mocking my helplessness. His breath reeked of decay and something else, something cloying and sweet. It was the smell of rot mingled with the sickly scent of overripe fruit, a nauseating combination that made my stomach churn. I could feel his breath on my face, hot and putrid, as he whispered words I couldn't understand.
He lifted his hand, and for a brief moment the mask slipped. It was as if time itself paused, the world holding its breath in anticipation. The mask, a mere facade of painted cheer, gave way to something far more sinister.
I saw what lay beneath the paint, the grotesque grin. It wasn't human. The features were twisted, almost demonic, with eyes that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of reality. The makeup, now peeling and cracked, revealed a visage that was both ancient and malevolent. It was something ancient, something evil. The forest around us seemed to darken, the shadows growing longer and more oppressive. I could sense other presences, lurking just beyond the edge of my vision, watching with cold, calculating eyes. The eyes, oh God, the eyes. They were unlike anything I had ever seen, filled with a cold, malevolent intelligence that seemed to see right through me. They were the eyes of a predator, a creature that thrived on fear and suffering. They burned with a cold, malevolent intelligence. It was as if they were alive, independent of the creature they belonged to, and they held me in their unyielding grip. I couldn't look away, no matter how much I wanted to. They stared into my soul, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the core that I was already dead. In that moment, I realized that there was no escape, no hope of salvation. The forest, the clowns, the eyes, they were all part of a nightmare from which I would never awaken. My fate was sealed, and all that was left was the cold, unrelenting embrace of the darkness.
The clown's laughter echoed in my ears, a mocking farewell. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once, reverberating through the trees and sending shivers down my spine. Then, everything went black. The darkness was absolute, swallowing me whole, leaving me with nothing but the haunting memory of that sinister laugh. When I woke, the forest was silent, the kind of silence that presses in on you, making you hyper-aware of every breath you take. The dense trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with the weight of the fog that clung to them. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The sun, a pale ghost behind the trees, was just beginning to rise. Its light was weak, barely piercing through the thick canopy above. The forest was bathed in a ghostly light, adding to the surreal atmosphere. I was alone, or at least, I thought I was. The feeling of isolation was overwhelming, making the forest seem even more otherworldly. Had it all been a dream? The events of the night before felt distant, like a half-remembered nightmare. The eerie laughter, the darkness, it all seemed so unreal. But the forest around me was very real, and the confusion I felt was palpable. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. A hallucination brought on by fear? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. The fear was still there, lurking just beneath the surface, ready to consume me. Then I saw it. A shadowy figure just at the edge of my vision, disappearing into the trees. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. Lying on the forest floor, a single deflated balloon. It was out of place, a stark contrast to the natural surroundings. The sight of it sent a chill down my spine, a reminder of the clown's laughter that still echoed in my mind. It was a clue, a sign that what I had experienced was not just a figment of my imagination. Its color was an unnatural, sickly green, a color that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, standing out against the earthy tones of the forest floor. It was a color that spoke of decay and corruption, a visual representation of the unease that had settled in my gut. The balloon was a harbinger, a warning of something sinister lurking in the shadows. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I was not alone. The forest was alive with unseen eyes, watching my every move. The feeling of being watched was oppressive, making it hard to breathe. My terror was palpable, a living thing that threatened to overwhelm me at any moment. That the forest was holding its breath, waiting. Waiting for what, I did not know. But the tension in the air was thick, almost tangible. It was as if the forest itself was a living entity, aware of my presence and biding its time. The silence was deafening, a prelude to something I could not yet comprehend. And in that moment, I realized that the forest was not just a backdrop to my fears, but an active participant in the unfolding nightmare. I haven't been back to Blackwood Forest, not in years. I can't. The silence is too loud. It screams of what I saw, what I know. The laughter still haunts my dreams. The clowns are out there, waiting. And the forest, it remembers. It always remembers.